We'll be looking at addressing gaps in sustainability, why fashion brands need more data. And we'll be exploring whether they do need more data, and if they do need more data, what sort of data do they need? So very looking forward to this conversation very much indeed. So as for the previous discussion groups, can I encourage you to please to add your name to your Zoom label so that we can contextualize your comments. That'd be very helpful if you could do that. You do the renaming by, if you hover your mouse over your picture, the three little dots appear, go there, and there's the opportunity to rename and add in your organization or company name. That'd be very helpful. If you're happy to be so, please do go on camera. It's always nice to see everybody. You don't have to, of course, but if you'd like to go on camera, that would be much appreciated, if at all possible. During the course of the session, as with previous discussion groups, you can use the chat box to put your points or questions for the panelists or for everybody else. So please do that. I can encourage you to do that as much as you can as possible. And if you wish to make a point, either put it into the chat box or use the raise hand function in the reactions button at the bottom. You can do that. So either way is fine. I will bring you in as best we can. And I'm very happy to let you make your questions in person, or if you prefer, I'm very happy to put the questions to the panelists myself. Okay. A point made from Arif at Cotton Connect saying that connectivity is low. I'm hoping it's not low for everybody. Certainly it seems okay from my side. And Arif's based in Pakistan, he says. Well, hopefully for most of us it's okay. I hope, Arif, that the connectivity is sufficient for you to be able to enjoy the session. Great. So joining me to discuss our topic and look at data and the gaps, we have Sandra Roos, who's Head of Sustainability with Capal, and Antje Feeling, Brand Services Manager for Europe with Bluesign. And my welcome to you both. Sandra, perhaps we can start with you. What data is it that about your operations and your supply chain that you need, and why do you need it, and how is this evolving, Sandra?
I'd say we have two types of need as a fashion brand, and the first one is perhaps the needs of all our stakeholders to answer all their questions, and that can be high and low and on details that I myself perhaps might not think is so extremely important for sustainability, but it might be important for some of the stakeholders. But then on the other hand, we have a need for data to really steer and control and improve our business, a more sustainable business. So in that case, we need really the important facts that we can use, and we need sorted information. So from this sort of overall, immense cloud of information that is available out there, we really need to sort out the important parameters.
So basically it's talking about what data is material. So how do you sort out for you? What is material? What is it you need? And what is it that you don't have? Where are the gaps?
We need, especially in these days, we need a lot more data on our supply chain's climate performance. We need a lot more data about climate reduction options. We need a lot of data about chemistry. We need a lot of process data, more or less, both about how our supply chain performs today, but also about the options that are out there.
Fine. And so how have you found that the data provision then has evolved? And how do you need this data? How do you process the data? Presumably you just don't want all your suppliers to send in a whole lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah, exactly. And so we need a system. And Capal is a member of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And basically that means that the HIG index tools are extremely important for us. And I think it's really good with systems that span so globally over the industry and that the same supplier does not need to fill in a spreadsheet for 1,000 customers, but they can fill in one module once. And the verification of the content will also be much simpler if we use these standardized systems that are available in a correct way.
Okay, right. We can come back to a lot of that as we go. Just a quick reminder to everybody, if you can, it would be great for all our information if you're able to put your organization or company name after your name in the Zoom window, as you can rename fairly easily. You just hover the mouse over your window and go to the 3 little dots, click there, and there's a rename function. So that'd be great if you're able to do that. And as I said earlier, I know some of you are just joining the call. Please use the chat box for your questions or points at any point, any stage, or you may use the raise hand function on the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom window. Okay, Antje, why don't turn to you now? Why don't you reflect on what you've heard from Sandra, her kind of desire for more data, her concerns around the kind of spreadsheet from every supplier, concerns around those sort of things and getting the gaps in the data met. And what for you characterizes the sort of tool that can help reassure brands, someone in Sandra's position, and minimize risks? Antje.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. So thank you, Ian, for introducing us. Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, for the opening words, basically to kick off our discussion. So thank you very much. Yeah, it's about, as Sandra has been saying, it's first of all, it's so depending on where you are, like as an organization, as a brand, within your sustainability journey, it's really about identifying the gaps. So you have to find where the errors are, where the gaps are. You have to start prioritizing, and you have to look for partners, SAC, for instance, BlueSign, to really develop a roadmap towards excellence. So, and this opportunity has every brand as per today, large, big scope, small scope. So it doesn't really matter like the size. Every brand has the opportunity, having the right partners, and to start finding the gaps, prioritizing, and developing a roadmap towards excellence. And a very important factor is the alignment. And this is difficult as per today because we are, yeah, sometimes it feels a little bit as if we are sitting like on a mess of data. So we have loads of information available. We have so much data, but how can we align it? Because it's measured completely differently. So the supply chain does measure different from the brands, for instance. So how can we align such data? And again, referring to our colleagues from the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So they are having done a good job so far to really like opening the door and having the entire supply chain entering this room for data management and towards a path of alignment. And you always have to like differentiate the setup of data. So are you talking chemistry? So this is, for instance, a player BlueSign would come into as a partner for the organization. Are we talking the supply network? Are we talking the transparency in the supply network? Are we talking partnership? And this is also like an area where a brand really should seek for the right partners. Also, BlueSign can support supply chain analysis, for instance. So, yeah, just pulling a little detour. Supply chain management is the base of sustainability. Get to know your supply chain. Do know your tier 1 supplier. Do know your tier 2 supplier. And even tier 3, tier 4, if somehow possible.
Well, okay, you've posed you've prompted the question really. So, how do you get to tier 2, 3, 4?
Know your supply chain.
How?
Work into transparency. seek for the information. So make sure you know all your assembling and manufacturing partners. Make sure you are nominating your materials. Make sure you are knowing the suppliers that are selling those materials, those zippers, those fabrics. Usually start with fabrics. So this is a big part of the journey into the data collection. So make sure you know your supply chain, work very transparent with all your partners, build up long-term relationships, and chemical integrity and all around will be easier for the organization.
Great. No, thanks very much. Thanks very much indeed. Sandra, let me put that back to you then. So Antje very clearly lays out this, well, the first thing to do here is to get to know your supply chain. So for you, what are the challenges around making those, closing those knowledge gaps so you do get to know your supply chain much better? Tier one, obviously, everyone you have a relationship with, easier. But then once you get beyond that, the challenges really begin to mount up.
I think as a fashion brand, it's these seasonal changes, of course, that is the challenge compared to workwear, where you can have the same fabric for 50 years. So the change that is in a way necessary in order to see that we really sell the products that the person will use, that the person will want to buy and will want to use, so that we don't produce any products that will not be sold, will not be used and loved by the user. So I think for fashion, it's inevitable that we have to change material suppliers, for example. So that's a big challenge, that we have a constant change, right? And we are on this journey together with so many others, trying to nominate more materials, trying to use traceability tools. Beyond Higg Index, we also are currently buying a traceability system. So, I mean, we have a long way to go, and I think, the challenge is to have the sort of energy to change, and all the time see to that you track and you post the same questions, and you build relations with your new tier one suppliers, so that they will want to get you in contact with the tier two and tier three, etc., and that they want to work with maybe your cotton farmer projects, cotton, even though that means that they have to change partners to work with. So it's sort of a lot with partnership, and to, in a changing fashion world, find new partners all the time, and trying to keep, of course, the partners that work well.
So then, I guess, are you saying that to answer to my question was, how do you find the kind of access to the lower tiers? Is it developing long-term relationships with suppliers? I mean, again, so often the sector is accused of not establishing long-term relationships. Is that the answer then here, to really get to know your suppliers and their suppliers' suppliers, so that you then can establish the data routes that enable you to have the data that you need?
Absolutely, and for sort of our basic collections and the garments and the products that we sell across season, their long-term supply relationship is I mean, that's really what Kappahl has been building also during the years. But to see that there's also this constant new friends that you have to find.
Okay, thank you very much. Some great questions coming in already. So let me turn to them straight away. Now, Arif Makdoum had mentioned that he was his connectivity wasn't great. Arif, do you want to come on and make your question? Well, I'll make it for you, perhaps. I realize it. I hope you're still on the line. So Arif's question is, sustainability issues cannot be separated from their social and biophysical context, and collaborative data governance responses to independent sustainability issues are inherently complex. How do you overcome the complexity challenges? Antje, do you want to have a go at that one?
It is super complex, and as Sandra has been saying, it is such a challenge, and our job is not done within a week, you know. So it's like it's a constant move and a constant dynamic to achieving certain targets and to achieve certain steps within this like journey. And Ian, can you just repeat the exact question, like the middle sentence?
I'm not entirely certain I actually understand the entirety of the question. I think the bit that really we were getting to is that it's very complex, and how do you overcome the complexity?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how to overcome. It's a step-by-step approach, I would say. So, and it's just very important. Collaboration is important, you know, and don't believe it's just your organization that is handling those challenges. No, it's every organization, you know, like, and call a friend. So it's very important that also the brands are collaborating and that we are in general collaborating within our industry, because sustainability and environmentalism does not know competition in that sense, you know. I mean, the brand is building its own strategy and its own stories, but like the tough parts, share with your friends, meet and greet, and yeah, call a friend and ask how to solve the next chemical challenge, for instance. So collaboration, partnership is essential to kind of like overcome a certain point of complexity.
Thank you very much indeed. Stephen Bethel, you've been very patiently waiting with your hand raised, so let me turn to you now. Please, over to you, Stephen. You're on mute. Still on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. It has to happen 3 or 4 times a day. Sorry about that. I just wanted to, I feel there's an opportunity, and just throughout the conversation, being in the supply chain for the circular economy, you know, we collect clothes in North America, we send it to our plant in India, the product is reprocessed and then is an input to new manufacturing. And I just wanted to throw out as a conversation point that our world is a very gray operating world that really needs, and there's an incredible opportunity, I think, for the industry going forward to shine some light on this, but also to add data behind it. So I would encourage that as part of the conversation. We talk about putting transparent into farm, you know, the guy that grows the cotton, and we would put up our hand and say, well, that same transparency should be in those who collect the clothes, the charities, the private collectors, the guys that sort it, and how it does. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix.
Thank you very much indeed. I guess it comes back to the point you made in an earlier session around thinking about, you know, adding carbon in here as well, in terms of the kind of, you know, the process. There's everything has an impact, and I guess it's important to consider everything in the round. So thanks very much for that. Let me move on. I want to bring in Egbert Dickers from Smith and Zoon. Going to make your point, Egbert?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I raised 2 questions. One question is more or less answered already on the SAC-HIC index, where yeah, at least I see some doubt in the data that are being used for brands in their decision making to opt for material A or for material B. So Ian, I'm not sure if you want me to comment on that question or on the other question that I posed.
I think so. If you wouldn't mind, let's just raise. I mean, not everyone may have seen the conversation. So yeah, what is your concern? There are doubts being raised about the HIG index, and you were going to ask Sandra how she was going to deal with them. Is that the question?
Yeah, that's correct. What I'm related to the leather industry, by the way. So what we experience is that for the good reasons, the supply chain is asking for many data on chemicals, but also on traceability, which is very good. No question about that. What I do worry is that brands are also taking the decisions based on the data set that are also supported by a wider layer of society of being the correct data. And I'm a bit worried that brands are taking decisions to move away from natural materials because of questionable data on the footprint, on the environmental footprint, for example.
That's a very good point, actually. Just to comment, yeah. Thank you for putting this in here. Yeah.
Sandra, do you want to comment on that? I mean,
yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Clearly,
yeah, I mean,
it's a big problem, right?
It's a big problem, and we cannot work with global averages on materials when there is such a variance between a good and a bad leather, a good and a bad cotton, a good and a bad polyester. And I mean, it's a start, I would say, the HIG MSI, which is just one tool. As I mean, I think everyone knows that the HIG also collects real data from the supply chain via the facility modules. And that is, of course, much better to use, because if you continue to use the HIG MSI, you will never have improvements, right? So you have your polyester shirt, you make a lot of improvements in the supply chain, you still get the same point in MSI. I mean, so no, we cannot use global average data, and that's a limitation. But I think it's a very good start that there is a common database that we can use, so that we can compare other aspects.
The difficulty is a bit that I agree with you that you cannot work with common data set. The problem is a bit that I see more and more brands using the data from the MSI to just compare it based on these data.
Mm.
So that means that you have the risk that you're putting aside a part of the industry for questionable data.
I agree.
That is what is really worrying me, and I think that brands have an ethical duty as well. To focus on that with a lot of responsibility.
And again, I want to point out the life cycle perspective, that it's really that we make products that are used for a long time. That is one of the greatest solutions that we have. And if we just focus on raw material input and not on how long will this product live, I mean, a leather product, now I'm talking in your favor, I mean, but compare a synthetic leather and a natural leather products, you can have them for 300 years, right? While a synthetic leather might really have a more of a 1 year life length. So, but there are also good quality synthetic leather, I would say. So that's my point, that we have to take into the consideration the whole life cycle perspective and see that we make products that have a function in the whole life and not only focus on the raw material stage.
But who is providing that data to you? Because that was leading to my second question, Ian, if you allow me.
I can also add something here.
I want to bring Antti as well.
Because that,
yeah. Go
because
ahead.
that is my other question, is that I think there is a responsibility of us all in society to bring the data on the table as well for the total life cycle, including the end of life.
Mm.
Who is providing you those data who is providing those data to the brands at this moment? Because that is the data set that you really can use to make responsible conclusions and decisions for the future. So who is providing you those data sets?
And do you want to jump in?
I have something to the initial content in regards to HIG. So I'm not referring to the life cycle
Sure.
And topic to the previous one. Just very quickly to HIG, we always have to differentiate whether we are talking verified data or the self-assessment based data. So that is very, very important. And as per current status, we have a lot non-verified data. So this will improve over the years, of course, but this is always something we have to keep on top of our mind, that we really talk about verified data. So A second point is when it comes to materiality and preferred fibers, preferred materials. Look at the scoring in the MSI or in HIC in general, like within the evaluation. So as soon as you have a blue sign approved material, it's scored very high. So this is definitely something you can rely on. Leather is out of scope so far, but we're working on it. So if we continue this chat and do have a panel in 18 months, 2 years, we can probably also talk about leather. Let's see. But in general, blue sign approved materials are very highly scored. So this is something, this is a very reliable bench when it comes to the MSI and the HIC evaluation in general. So this was my bit to contribute here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sandra, did you want to comment on the life cycle analysis comment?
No, yeah, I would, but that's more of a, yes, we would really need more data here than that we sit with a solution to this. That,
okay.
Yeah, maybe that's...
Sure. This is an area where more data is definitely required. I think we can agree on that. Paula Rogers from ATI Group, your question.
Sorry, hi.
Hi.
I'm looking for my question now. Sorry, so my question was regarding VF Corp did an assessment last year, and they looked at 46 products, and they looked at tier 1 to tier 4, and they counted 1,052 suppliers. Just for 46 products. Now, I've worked with fashion brands my whole life, and we design like maybe 10,000 items a year. This data is only for upstream, not downstream, and it doesn't include tier 5. So to me, if you want to approve this many suppliers, you're talking hundreds of thousands of suppliers. How can we practically do this? This just seems so... and to do it efficiently and economically, it just feels like we're trying to boil the ocean.
Sandra, do you want to go first? Do you share that? Share those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, we need to, of course. We are liable of what's happening in the whole value chain. But I think the answer lies a lot in Antje's area, that we, as a brand, we cannot be expected to keep up with all this information and do verifications ourselves. We really need to rely on third-party initiatives here.
Antje, is it tools to the rescue?
It's a tough job. It's a very tough job, and I would say that passion is a very, very helpful tool, and like business and personal motivation to get that ball rolling. Of course, I mean, like you have consultancy partners that are, of course, doing such jobs, and also partners like BlueSign or the SAC or Textile Exchange, probably also when it comes to like preferred fiber setups and things. So you have those partners, but of course you need manpower at brand side. You need the right systems. You need sufficient PLM systems to kind of establish processes and management systems. And it's a very, very long road, but it's absolutely worth to start it. And yet we do not have like a governmental deadline or such, but many legislations are coming out in Germany, for instance. In Europe, kind of like supply chain regulations are starting to be established. So this is something, supply chain transparency and supply chain knowledge and control is something that will be regulated governmentally, like over the years. And as far as you have come up front of those regulations as better, and pick bits and pieces within your organization. Don't plan the entire setup right away. Focus.
Great, well, thank you. Good advice. Rosa Busch-Ascher from Fairtrade Germany, would you like to make your point?
Yes, thank you very much for coming back to me. I hope you can hear me. My first question was towards Sandra Rose. If it's so at Fairtrade Germany, we are working together with licensee partners who are also producing textiles who are made with Fairtrade certified cotton, or partners who are working towards a living wage on the CMT or fabric spinner level. But my question was to overcome this huge challenge in the fashion industry of the seasonal changing collections, which always have to be super new, super attractive, super trendy, and always give an incentive, of course, to the consumers to buy them, to wear them. If it's a good idea to start with an NOS collection, which can be made step by step, sustainable. I don't know if on material level or on level of supporting or improving the working conditions on a CMT level for garment workers, for example.
I'm sorry, I don't know what NOS collection is.
Never out of stock.
Sorry.
Never out of stock.
Yeah. Never out of stock, right? So, but
sorry.
No, but I would. What means CMT? Sorry. So this is my abbreviation.
Cut, make, trim.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Actually makes the clothes.
Okay.
Sews them together. The women sitting behind the sewing machines and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Sandra.
Sorry, Sandra. But to you then, Sandra. But I guess it does come back to an earlier point about developing more relationships with our longer term relationships with suppliers.
It does, but it's also about putting products on the market that will actually be used by someone. Otherwise, there is no meaning, sort of. And I think that we all work with more like carryover and several seasons and NOS than collections as one way of doing this. And it's also, there are very many advantages with that. But I think that the answer is not that we make the same garments year after year. That's too simple. I mean, you know that too. But fashion is a cultural thing. It covers our basic needs. It can be covered by secondhand, for example. That's a really good option if you want to vary your wardrobe. But to have the ability to express yourself and show festive events, religion, uniforms showing your status. I mean, the culture in fashion is inevitably changing, though I think we should go more to these never out of stock collections. We will always have this difficult fashion to control. Sorry, maybe I was a little bit inconcrete. I mean, would it be easier for brands to start to say, we cannot always work with the same suppliers as, for example, smaller brands can do that, or middle big companies and brands can do that. So as a big company, is it easier for a big company to start with a never out of stock all year round collection, because there, okay, it's always there's a black pullover with the V-neck, which we are, working with mostly the same suppliers, and we can concentrate on improving on any step on the supply chain, because we are for these collections not under the pressure to regularly change them. Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's, the dream for us to be able to do that. So we are definitely striving towards that, and I think that all of us are striving to slow down the pace of fashion. But it will take time. But even when we have slowed down a lot and maybe are 90% NOS, then we will still have this cultural need in people to have new things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change the supplier, because when you have worked with supplier for many years and made improvements and all that work, I mean, it's such a lot of effort or passion, as Antje said, and then another brand comes and do the manufacturing there, you know.
Yeah.
So then you spent all the resources and efforts, and someone else take the advantage of that. So definitely that's the dream, to be able to stick to the same suppliers.
Thank you. Great. Antje, I'll bring you in a second. I just want to bring in another question. Loads of questions. I want to try to get.
I have one line to add, exactly.
So Jana Prosvetov from Cargill. Can I make your question?
Yes, I would actually, I'm going to change it up a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Good afternoon. So given the fact that a lot of brands have come out and publicly made commitments to reducing their sustainability footprint, especially as it relates to carbon emissions, there's very little chance that brands can achieve that just through their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, right? So they're for sure going to need partnership with throughout their supply chains, and they will need to account for scope 3 or progress in scope 3 emissions as well. However, a lot of these suppliers in the value chain are at least, you know, couple 2-3 steps removed. So how do you see these types of partnerships form between suppliers and manufacturers a couple steps up from the brand owners and the brand owners? Because oftentimes the materials that are used are dictated by the brands, right? They just tell the manufacturers, these are the materials we need to use for this collection, etc. But the innovation of the materials happens a few steps up from those, you know, manufacturers of garments. So how do you see these partnerships forming, and how do suppliers higher up in the value chain approach and engage with brand owners?
Great question. Thanks very much indeed. Antje.
So it refers a little bit to my first answer, actually. So it's a lot about the sourcing model. And that's very important too. I mean, we probably also have to aim for like a shift in culture of purchasing goods, like from the consumer side, as the previous topic has been treated. But also a lot like really depends on the sourcing model of the brand, and the organization has power and should be confident to really align the sourcing model in regards to a stronger sustainability message. So that is just what I would like to say in that sense. And this also refers to the second part now, talking about emission reduction and measurements. And okay, many companies are pulling out those numbers and doing the calculations, but I think, and this is a little bit like my personal point of view, we are just at the starting point in doing those evaluations. You know, the supply chain is very good and is delivering an amazing job into our favor, giving us data they can provide. But it's still a tiny bit a piece of data, so it's not the entire scope. And as the question has been correctly raised, so focus should be on scope 3, because scope 3 from positioning from a brand is the supply chain, and the supply chain, especially tier 2, is imposing the most. So yeah, so most hazardous substances and the entire stuff around this comes from the tier 2 supply chain. So this is where really needs to be sitting the focus. And also there, it's so important to enforce the collaboration between the brand and the supply chain. Does this answer a little bit the question?
It does. I guess I'm just curious. It sometimes feels like the chicken or the egg type of problem, right? Like who goes first? Is this the brand?
Absolutely.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and collaboration, you know, brand to support the supply chain to support the brand. It's eye level. Very important.
Thank you very much indeed. I've often wondered actually if it would be possible to ever put the onus on a supplier to look back up the supply chain. So I have my responsibility to make it clear to my customers, customers, what I am doing to engage with my emissions and everything else. That'd be quite an interesting thing if there was a kind of the engagement the opposite way. Perhaps that's unlikely to happen. But thank you very much indeed. I'd like to bring in Sybil from Earthworm Foundation. I'd like to make your question. I will make the question then. The question was around suppliers' fear of transparency. So transparency is the key to change, question says, and mentions cotton. There are very many in the mix, so it's very hard to get back to the origin and transform the supply chain. And there's also costs to be involved as well. But I mean, indeed, I think it's the central point really is the fear of transparency. Is this Sandra, is this something that you've come across where you're asking for data, but there's a kind of a sense of, I'm concerned about giving up data, and there's a fear of transparency rather than embracing of transparency.
I think the value of transparency is increased so much that the fear has reduced it. That yes, there is a little risk that you may get less margins and someone may steal your supplier from you, etc. But I think that the benefits of being transparent is starting to show, that you can actually report in a transparent and easy way, and that you can gain business on it, being transparent. So I think the advantages are bringing out the fear.
And Kate, do you want to comment on that?
I would love to, yes. Yeah, transparency is so essential. And as Sandra has been saying, it has been like gaining lots the past years. So we are living in comparison 20 years ago. We are already in a very transparent industry. I do understand fear though. And also here collaboration comes in. So make sure you have great partnerships on eye level. And like when it comes to like fear for transparency, we're not talking about like a confidential recipe about a coating, so there are confidentialities within the supply network, definitely, for sure, fair enough, and that has to stay as it is. But there may be a fear from a supplier, like telling, well, sorry, a certain chemical has been found in my factory. So, and this is the sort of transparency that has to be outspoken. And like as a business partner, the brand, make sure you're solving the problem together, like be grateful for the supplier being so open, telling you, hey, there's a chemistry in my company that is forbidden, but I found it like in the back corner, whatever, find a solution together, because it's giving and taking. Don't cut the business, solve the problem together. And I think this is a way to eliminate fear, both sides. Yeah.
It's a great point, isn't it? The kind of, transparency works, it needs to work both ways, and it's about developing the trust both ways.
Always.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I want to try to get through all the questions, so we'll push on to the next one, which is from Dawa Dorje from Cotton Connect. Do you want to make your point, Dawa?
Oh, yes.
Well, I'll make, excellent. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So my question is for Sandra, actually. This is regarding from the customer perspective. What do you think the brands see as of more value, sustainably sourced product or product value in terms of the pricing? And the other part is, how do brands support the cost components incurred by the suppliers that impacts the cost of the product itself? Thank you.
The sound was a bit...
I guess the question, my interpretation of the question was that where do you see the value? How is there the value inherent in sustainably sourcing something, a product? How do you value that versus in terms of the actual just pricing and economic pricing? How do you balance the value from a customer, and how do customers value that? And then leading on from that, how should brands support the cost component incurred by the supplier in making that inherent sustainable sourcing? So 2 parts. Sandra.
Yeah, I think it's the $1,000 question, actually. So how can we sort of get the consumer to pay more for a product that is sustainably sourced? And I think transparency is on its way. I think we're in the beginning of a journey, and in 10 years, I think that it will be so obvious that the consumer actually takes an informed decision. What do I get for my money? So then it will price itself. Maybe we even have a carbon pricing in 10 years. But basically, as it is now, I'm sure you know, it's whether we have an internal process, if that would cost more, so to say, to investigate an alternative and check everything, if that price would be higher compared to sort of buying a already verified solution. I hope I got the question right.
I think so. I certainly say it's a very, as you said, $1,000 question. It's a very tricky one. I mean, something that lots of brands are wrestling with, for sure. Thank you, Dawa. Let me turn to Joanna Kinander, Eaton Shirts.
Yeah, hi. My question had a little different angle, perhaps, because I was curious to find out a little more about data collection that maybe Blue Sign C or other organizations. What kind of trends or data do we see coming? Have we already seen some more data regarding wet finish to be more accessible? Because we discussed a lot of materials in the form of cotton versus polyester, and we were nudging a little bit on it before, that there is good polyester and bad polyester, good cotton, bad cotton. But what trends do we see in finding out the difference between good cotton and bad cotton in the future?
Thank you very much indeed. Antje, one for you, I think.
Yeah, so I think, well, I'm a big fan of Textile Exchange. I think this is a great source to really, like really technology-based, get to know what potentially is the best right now, because we also have to consider the timing perspective, because technologies are evolving. The world is changing, you know, resources are changing, so we cannot like to generalize probably a focus. So in that sense, so really going down to the material, I would always, yeah, I think referring to Textile Exchange is a safe bench in general knowledge, but also making up an own opinion is always essential in my point of view. When it comes to like data, like future visions, yeah, it's maybe not a vision because it's like highly required, is kind of like a generalized like impact data setup, like eKPIs. So that is very, very important. And many organizations are working on having this on a very reliable, verified level. So this is like future talk, I would say, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. One final question I want to make, and I'll put it to Sandra, if I may. It's from Angela Adams at Qantas. If I may, I'll look at myself just because we're almost at the very end of the session. And it's basically around collaboration between different databases and initiatives. Do you think, Sandra, there will be, or what do you see in terms of the likelihood of there being more collaboration around the various initiatives that are kicking around? Once the collaboration definitely will be make things easier for everybody, but do you think that's going to happen, Sandra? Is that the future?
Yes, and I think we see it already, that the large initiatives, they do actually form coalitions.
Excellent, a succinct way to end the session. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you so much to everybody. It's been a wonderful session, loads of questions, and thank you everyone for coming on camera and giving your questions in person. It makes such a difference when the person who's wants to make the questions able to make it themselves, and it's our way of trying to recreate what would happen in an actual conference if we're all sitting in the same room. Thank you very much indeed to Sandra and to Antje for your insight and your candor. It's been excellent. really useful to establish and frame our discussions. So we're back in a plenary session in 10 minutes. We have looking at taking responsibility. Will transparency lead to sustainability or to transparent unsustainability? So more on transparency, a very good lead from our conversation just now. That's being led by my colleague Toby Webb, and he's got a colleague of Antjes from BlueSign and the president of the US Cotton Trust Protocol as well. So well worth visiting that. That's starting top of the hour, is in a plenary session. But for now, thank you very much indeed, and see you soon.